just, you have certain talents, right? You know, some people
So cute. I'd like to call the April Advisory Board of Health meeting to order. If we can rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have roll call, please. Thank you.
Leanne Klink, present. Carolyn Richards, present. Steve Smith,
Present.
Joseph Hayes. John Falk, present. Monica Standell.
Here.
I don't have the list in front of me. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'll follow her, but-
Here.
Thank you. Let's go into citizens wishing to address the board. We'll start with Michael McCartan, followed by Vicki Blackburn. Just remember that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael McCartan. I live in St. Clair. I've spent the last 50 years of my life in public service in St. Clair County. But this is the first time that I've been concerned enough to speak during public comment portion of the meeting. I'm here today because of the reckless comments made by the medical director concerning the CSCB at the end of the last meeting. Although he prefaced his remarks by acknowledging that he didn't know who they were, he unleashed a series of unfounded accusations referring to the group as, in quotes, pseudo-governmental operation that usurps the authority of the medical director. He described the group as a shadow county government making decisions in the dark, steering public allocations and expenses. I'm not here to explain or defend the CSCB. I'm here to register my concern about how an appointed public official at a public meeting on the public record could make such outrageous, unsubstantiated statements impugning the reputations of so many. My concern is that that kind of conduct undermines trust and respect for the office of the medical director, where trust and confidence are so essential to the credibility of the office. It further erodes the credibility of the Department of Public Health, and by extension, county government. The medical director has strong supporters who trust his judgment. In fact, at the following Board of Commissioners meeting, during public comment, many of the medical director's unfounded opinions were shared as though they were facts. That is a disservice to his followers. Public officials, when they are elected or appointed, have a responsibility to speak based on facts. While everyone is entitled to their own personal opinion over a cup of coffee, personal opinions or ideology have no place in addressing public policy. Respect for the public office requires that the words are thoughtful, measured, and based on facts. Words matter. When I hear opinions such as those expressed by the medical director at the last meeting with such strident language used so eloquently, yet without basis in fact, it makes me question the credibility of other positions, whether it be immunization, solar panels, or fluoride, all topics critical to the residents of St. Clair County. The health department and the medical director office have a strong tradition of respect in our county. It is essential that that confidence and respect remains high. Thank you for deciding to get more information before you make your informed decision. Thank you for your service to St. Clair County, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Vicki Blackburn, followed by Tracy Berge.
Good morning. I had pages of animated things that I wanted to share this morning, and I'm going to defer to Mr. McCartan, who is an exemplary public servant, has been all the years that I've lived here. He volunteers, he goes to meetings, he knows the people, he has integrity, he's trustworthy, he's not about his ego. And this isn't a commercial for him. I didn't even know he was going to be here today. What I will say is that, Dr. Nevin, I heard you say something at the last meeting. Thank you. I heard you say something at the last meeting about how you would like to not be so tied into St. Clair County. And I think that that's perhaps words of wisdom and insight on your part, because you're part-time. You've been given an extraordinary amount of unfettered power. The silence speaks for itself. Everybody knows why I'm standing here and not talking. I'm waiting for eye contact. I'm waiting to have some semblance of meeting halfway at the middle. I try at all these meetings with folks from different points of view and perspectives. I try really hard to reach out to folks and to listen to them and their spiritual and health-related ideas, and I use that to ask myself, am I missing something? How can I increase my perspective. That's my goal. I come here to these meetings, I would rather other faces show up. I'm willing, I'm here to serve. I don't get paid, I'm not a politician, I have no ambitions with that. So Leanne, I'm looking at you, and I'm not calling you in a bad way at all. This is a good thing. I'm really looking to you to use your vote and your judgment and your knowledge of CSCB to stand up for what you know is true about the organization. Because I did go to a CSCB meeting where you gave what I thought was an excellent presentation on Sparrow. And I want to thank you for that presentation because I learned a lot, a whole lot. And I really appreciate your service in that realm. So with that, I wanted to say I hope.
Got to
you
wrap
have
it
a
up, Ms.
good rest of your
Blackburn.
day.
Thank you.
Tracy Berge, followed by Carol Miller.
Thank you all for coming today and taking time out of your days. And I know this is so many hours that you all diligently work so hard for the people of St. Clair County. And I want you to know that I am grateful. To speak, I wasn't going to speak today. I had to kind of play with my schedule because it's important. And we need to get out and we need to speak to what the people of St. Clair County want. And I think that it's super important that we look at both sides, because what I keep hearing is they keep speaking that this is a political agenda. No, this is not a political agenda. I think the people have felt diminished and demoralized, and that their power and the things that they thought were so important during COVID. Science is an ever-changing product of what we are seeing. We're seeing the CDC is changing their ideas. You know, during COVID, I stood up here at the county commissioner meeting saying, please unmask our babies. Our kids deserve better. The distress and the anxiety that our children have suffered from that has been like unbelievable. And my children were young. I think they were in 5th grade and 7th grade. And to watch that, and then when I watched people who had younger children and they went through that. And so I come here with a couple thoughts in mind that the people deserve a right and the right to have a choice. And I think that I am grateful that we have your ear and that you are all listening. And I'm hoping prayerfully that you are trying to make good decisions for the people of St. Clair County. I happened to see a new article that came out from NPR, and I found it to be disgusting that it was terribly one-sided. And I think that as people, when we came here during COVID and they talked about how we should all just be jumping up and down for public health care, and that we should think that all these things were so great, but yet they truly didn't care about what the people wanted during COVID. They locked our poor little kids down, masked them like dogs. I mean, that was crazy. And you know what? The people that don't believe, it's because we've all been through that with our children. And we just want to make sure that we can protect our children farther going out. I think that even the CDC has changed their, federally, they have decided that vaccines, the options of vaccines are different than they used to be. So if we are going to move forward, I think that we have to remember that we have to speak for all of our families. And I just wanted to leave everyone with this. I had read this, Maya Angelou says that when someone shows you who they are, that we should believe them. And so when I think of that quote, that we should believe people when we see them, that we should, and we can do better for St. Clair County. And I'm just hoping that you all will do that. Thank you.
Carol, followed by Dawn. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. You all know I do deep dives into my information. So when the CSCB came up, I had never heard of it. I've been a nurse going on 43 years, and I've never heard of this. I've lived in St. Clair County all of my life except for 2 years. So that to me is scary. A couple of the things that I found, I just want to go through. They have an overlap with existing government agencies. Many of the CSCB members already include the Health Department, CMH, DHHS, the Sheriff's Office, the courts, and nonprofits. These agents already coordinate services, share ideas, share data, and plan programs. So the question becomes, what is CSCB doing that isn't already being done? They possess no clear authority or accountability. They are not elected. They do not directly provide services. They do not appear to control funding directly, yet they get money. It says that they provide direction, recommend priorities, and influence planning. That creates a gray area. Who gave them authority? Who holds them accountable? Coordination versus actual outcomes. They emphasize collaboration, network infrastructure, and strengthening relationships. But these are processes. They're not measurable results. So what tangible outcomes can be directly tied to the CSCB? They have a large membership. They went from 7 members to 74. Even though they have a large membership, they have a diffused responsibility. Decisions can become vague. Responsibility is spread thin, and it's hard to identify who is actually accountable. So this can lead to meetings without action, reports without enforcement. Next, potential duplication of strategic planning. CSCB conducts strategic planning, reviews community data, identifies needs and priorities, but so does the county government, CMH. Liz gives us a lot of data from the health department and United Way. So we have a duplication of studies, reports, committees. So we have influence without transparency. They include government officials, they discuss community priorities and influence direction of services, but not always widely visible to the public. Not always clearly subject to full public scrutiny, like elected bodies. What formal authority does the CSCB have to influence policy or direction within St. Clair County? None. Who holds them accountable for their decisions and recommendations? Nobody. Are CSCB meetings subject to the same transparency standards as other public bodies? No.
Got to wrap it up, Carol.
Okay.
Please.
Please, this is a group that is a duplication, and we don't need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dawn Davy, followed by Sally. I'm sorry, what is Sally's? Curry, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Davy. I am a board member for the ARC of St. Clair County, who is included in the list of 74 members of the CSBC. And I watched your last meeting, and I remember there was a few of you who had said they had never heard of the CSBC before, and I thought to myself, gee, Dawn, you haven't either. And I'm on the Board for Community Mental Health. I am on the ARC Recipients' Rights Committee for CMH. I am a member of the ARC of Michigan's Governmental Affairs Committee. I am also the Mayor Pro Tem in Algonac. And I looked at the list and I went, oh, goody. This is a group of, because there's nothing more that we want in the ARC, is to see more services brought downriver. I remember Liz King, you were with us when we toured the school a few years ago, and I was all kinds of happy. And Kathy Baker from Blue Water Developmental Housing. And I have a daughter who's developmentally impaired, and I'm like, oh, yay, we need these down here. When I listened to Dr. Nevin, I don't want to use the word offended, but I was a little bit offended because I don't think that the time and research that should have been put into discussing this organization happened, because they don't have closed meetings. There are only 2 that are closed, and they are state mandated to be closed. If you go on their website, they have agendas and minutes posted there, and they're not full-body agendas and minutes. They're steering committee minutes. we, I watch the meetings from the comfort of my own home. I think that listening to some of these things, this is being seen as a organization, and the focus isn't being put on the people who need these services. And the people with boots on the ground are being overlooked. I don't, for the life of me, understand why. And collaborative that has been around.
Got to wrap it up, Ms. Davy, please.
Okay, I do have that I would like to give to the chair. There are two, one from Macomb County, one from Genesee County, of the collaboratives that they have that are paid for through their county.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Sally Curry?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Sally Curry. For over 42 years, I have dedicated my career to serving runaway and homeless youth, holding roles as director and grant writer for the Harbor Wings Transitional Living Program and the Street Outreach Program. These programs have provided shelter, housing, and outreach to young people in need of safety and stability. In addition, I serve as federal grant reviewer and peer reviewer for runaway and homeless youth programs across the nation, giving me insight into both the applicant and reviewer process. I'm here to share why the Community Service Coordinating Body is so vital to our community. First, the CPSC brings together agencies to foster coordination, teamwork, and collaborative problem solving. Through these partnerships, agencies can apply for federal, state, and local grants more effectively. For example, the Harbor alone receives over $1 million a year to support at-risk youth, thanks in part to the CSCB support. Second, collaboration is not just encouraged in federal grants, it's required. Agencies must identify their partners and explain their roles in the grant applications, often with supporting letters. With limited space, and we're talking 85 pages to answer 50 pages of criteria. There's limited space in these applications. A unified letter from the CSCB and its Housing and Support Services Work Group, which serves as the continuum of care, is one of the most effective ways to meet these requirements. These groups review projects and provide formal unanimous approval, which strengthens our application. Regular CVSC meetings and information sharing make it simple to document positive partnerships, what you have to do in writing federal grants. I've written over 100. I've reviewed probably 400, and it's absolutely required. From a reviewer's perspective, these collaborative statements are crucial. Losing even a few points in a competitive grant process, and sometimes only 1 point, can result in a loss of funding or not being funded. The CFCB helps us to avoid that risk. Third, the CVSC is essential for compliance. Federal regulations require all federally and state-funded programs providers to participate in a continuum of care. With this rule, when this rule was introduced, the CVSC established a local continuum of care, keeping us in compliance. The CVSC also manages the homeless data, tracking needs, outcomes, and trends, and it's shared with our elected officials to help drive smarter countywide solutions. In Michigan, there's a final funding rule that requires blended funding models. The CSCB and COC, Continuum Care, negotiate these arrangements.
Got to wrap it up, Ms. Curry, please.
Ensuring homeless funds are distributed locally. Ultimately, the CVSC is more than just a meeting group, it's a true community. And it helps
Thank you, Ms.
generate
Curry.
millions in funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all I have signed in for. Just, you wanted to speak? Come on up.
Good morning. My name is Gary Lokers. I live at 5650 Willow Canyon Drive. I want to bring something to the attention of the board. I'm going to reach out to some state representatives and even CMH and local school districts. Over the last 6 months, I've been researching childhood trauma, and I think we can all raise our hand that we've known children that have been on behavior drugs, things like Adderall, Ritalin, things like that. And very rarely are things like therapy, things like breath work, things like counseling advised to those children. Instead, they're put on drugs, and they're expected to self-regulate with drugs. Never are the parents put in therapy, never are the families put in counseling. But if you look at the characteristics of childhood trauma and how it plays a vital role in a child's behavior, it's actually staggering. And I think it would be considered maybe a national epidemic. A lot of these children, when they're on these drugs, later in life, they resort to being on, they go to regular drugs because they can't get the fix anymore. I just think it's really serious, and if you're at all interested, I'd love to share some documentation with you. Reach out to me. I just think it's an epidemic. Drugs aren't the answer. Therapy's the answer. Counseling's the answer. And really taking into consideration that kids don't know how to self-regulate if they're not taught that. So that's all I've got. I appreciate you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wished to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have two presentations this morning. We're going to start with Pastor Trey Smith. So I'm sorry, before you get started, for each presentation, we're going to try and keep you guys to 10 minutes or so, and then a short question and answer afterwards. Then if it needs more than that, we'll schedule it again.
Not a problem. I'm watching the clock and 10 minutes is on the dial. So, thank you all so much for allowing me to share today. I'm going to give you a short introduction on who I actually am. There are three major events in my life that actually shaped the way I think, the way I live, and the way I exist. First, when I was around 6 months, I drowned in a pond, and I was clinically dead for 3 days. And the story goes that it was through the fervent prayers, because at that particular point, medical professionals gave up. They said there was nothing more they can do. All they could do is wait. The second experience is when I was 8, I was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. And I was given 5 years to live at that point. And again, medical professionals gave up and said, this is the best that can happen. And then lastly, about 3 years ago, my father was on dialysis along with my stepfather. And unlike my stepfather, I was given an opportunity to decide if he would live or he would die. These three experiences shaped the way I see ministry, the way I see assisting people, the way I see helping people. And I realized that sometimes our decisions made with wrong information or limited information can be the difference between life and death for someone.
I've learned over the years, it's that it only takes one person, one patient, one moment to change your life forever. To change your perspective, color your thinking, to force you to reevaluate everything you think you know, to make you ask yourself the toughest questions. Do you know who you are? Do you understand what has happened to you? Do you want to live this way?
Three questions that will shape this presentation, and simply asking ourselves, do we know who we are? If you look at yourself and you realize how you got to this space and how this place, how you see life, the question is, who are you really? I love movies, as you can see. I like that sitcom, and I use that clip to push this point. And there's another movie that I'll reference here, The Dark Knight Rises, when Bane was engaging with this businessman, and he began to yell at him and talk about how powerful he was and all of this. And then he was telling the room to be dismissed, and then he looked at him and he said, "Don't leave, I'm in charge." And he said the most powerful quote in the movie. He said, "Do you feel in charge?" This is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people face in their lives, is that they don't feel like they have control. Even if you get sick or something goes wrong or there's a problem within your life, we constantly have to run to somebody who's considered an expert or somebody who's considered somebody who runs that field or understands human biology or human thought. But the trouble is every individual is different and must be treated as different. In ministry, one thing that makes us successful as actual pastors who are called and not just careered, we realize that each individual must be treated like an individual with unique DNA, with a unique history. Because if we treat them like nothing more than a bunch of data or just another group of people, well, this is how they act, or this is how this population is, the underserved, that is such a huge term, and we take it in such a vague way because the reality is there are so many different groups of people that exist within that. Because we understand that identity does determine behavior. What's interesting is that this is not a new problem. Before modern psychology, healing was centered on the whole person. Aristotle said, the soul is essential for the living being. Also, Plato said, a part can never be well unless the whole is well. And my favorite quote by Hippocrates, he said, it is more important to know what sort of person has a disease than what sort of disease a person has. And that's why we have to be mindful when we're thinking about what homelessness is and what suicide is. Homelessness and houselessness are two different realities. Some people may not have a house, but they're not homeless. They're just going through a momentary lapse. But there are some people that have houses. They live in places. They're not in danger of losing it, but they don't feel like they belong. The ecosystem doesn't support them. If you look at the current system, another great quote supports that idea. When you think about how peace and victory and no competition and no other groups doing the same work, you find yourself not having to evolve, not having to do better, not having to make sure you're on the cutting edge, because if there's no competition, there's no reason to see if you're actually able to meet needs and bring results. The system we have today is doing decent work, but it's under pressure, providing provider shortages, the funding decreases, and fragmented care. The idea is that you have an individual who has a huge caseload, and if you hear that person being introduced by their caseload or the long hours, how in the world can they actually take the time to focus on the results? Because it happens. We find ourselves being caught by the system, not knowing if we actually are meeting the needs that are available. In that clip that we first saw, Christina Yang had to come back to an individual who was on a vent and say, I have to ask you one more time before we pull the vent. Do you know who you are? Do you realize what's happened to you? Do you want to live this way? Because this is all the information he's given, and all the people around the bed will determine his references for this decision he's going to make that will determine his life. And so that brings us to this point and the reason why we're here. What if we could take a place and turn it into a hub that would identify the person, figure out their history, figure out where they're coming from, figure out where they're meant to go, and then make sure they have the best ecosystem, and then make our community a forerunner in actually looking into soul care, more than just psychology, neurology, but the whole person, and figuring out what belief systems may be helpful, what opportunities may help this individual find a better way. And why is this important? Because our community is uniquely crafted in a way that we can look at problems directly, and we don't have to be overwhelmed like in New York or in LA or in Atlanta or in Miami, and we can actually take time and care for each individual. We don't have thousands upon thousands of people killing themselves every day. We don't have thousands upon thousands of people without a house, but we have a chance to create a model where we can actually get back the soul of a person. So again, as we're looking at this, I'll ask you this question before I get to the ask. Do you know who you are? Do you realize what's happening to you? And do you want to live this way? Before I saw the last commissioners meeting, I had a different ask from you all. But now, after the commissioners meeting, I think the clear ask is, give us an opportunity of having access to a property, to purchase the property, and to show you that after 90 days, this could be something that can be integrated in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And if you allow us to show you an autonomous, community-led, citizen-led opportunity without government funds, government bureaucracy, and just allow the people to take care of themselves, you may be pleasantly surprised that you'll have less people complaining at this podium, but asking for more opportunities in the future. Any questions? With 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining.
No. You still have 1 minute, 10 seconds to talk. Then you get questions.
I'll save that for my pocket when I have another 3-minute speech.
Yeah. So, we heard last month's, and then, so where is your funding going to come from?
So there are a few different places that we have. We have a lot of individual donors who are anonymous. It's actually been helpful for our church. One thing I've been working for a long time is changing the way that our church is funded, because normally what we do is offerings, tithe and offering. And I've taken the last 5 years to really go through that model through a lot of bumps and bruises, but find individuals and self-sustaining causes, such as there's a group called tgci.com that actually has, again, that's tgci.com, that has the top 10 foundation supporters from all over the nation, and they support causes like this. And so we do have individuals that prefer to be anonymous, but will keep the project funded. That's why, before I would even enter into any agreement, I would be able to show you 10 years of sustainability.
And what exactly, I'm sorry if I'm just, but what exactly is your ask of us then? Support for the project?
Support for allowing us to go before the commissioners, like that one, and allowing us to take their RFP and purchase.
So Trey, quick question, well, a multi-parted question, I
Go.
guess. Since you are going through private donors and private funding, this does give you a little more latitude than government funding.
Yeah.
With that latitude, how, and addressing the whole person, do you think you'll be able to address some of the current homeless needs because of the person's convictions or other concerns that prevent them from going into a standard emergency house or everything?
Yes, so it looks a few different ways. First and foremost, there's a few different cases we've had. We've had an individual who ended up being homeless, and we realized that this community just wasn't a good fit for that person. It just wasn't the ecosystem for them. So we ended up helping them get placed through a partner in Chicago, the Chicago area, and now they're thriving. They got employment, they found better opportunities, and so that's one way. Number two, Mr. Freed identifies that there's about 100 or so individuals who are consistently homeless in Port Huron. And through investigation, dialogue, personal connection, we definitely can see if housing them, providing services here, or connecting them to a better network somewhere else would be the answer. So that's a long answer of yes.
And then a follow-up question to that is, because you have the interconnections, you're able to place them in other organizations that would be better fits for them?
Say that last part again, please.
Because you have other organizations and other networks that are outside of governmental agency and community-based, you'd be able to fit them in organizations, kind of like a teen challenge or something like that around that whole bit.
That or another Salvation Army in a different space that has a different community, or just there's actually an underground railroad-like system for homeless people. There are homes that they have extra rooms and they're willing to give people 30 days, 60 days, an opportunity to redevelop their lives, but it's so low-key and it's not integrated in any major system, but it exists throughout actually the world. It's an international system. So yes.
So at this building, would you house, you would counsel, like, what, give me the model.
Okay, so some of it's in your,
Yeah, I see some.
yeah, some of it's there,
Right.
but see, the difference is, depending upon the agreement, if the commissioners support it, then we can look at why are they supporting it. For an example, I've noticed that some agreements have come with help this county first, deal with this population first. The goal is to get a model working with an existing population that would be acceptable if they approve it. Now, if they don't, there are other places that we can look at, and then we can look at what's available, because there's three realities. Number one, who's actually going to admit they need help? And then number two, who's actually going to submit to a process? And then the last reality is, are they willing to actually give us the right to tell them that they are right or wrong? And so that's important to us. And so I could say that we would want to deal with those 100 individuals, but then the commissioners could say, we want you to at least get 25% of them. And so that's kind of the leeway we give in asking for the support from our county. So that program, so to be more specific, I can't just say that we would have these set programs, because what if they don't work? And we've put all these resources. We want to be based upon the individuals. And the difference is being called versus being careered. We are open to see the results in the people. We don't have to follow a statutory requirement. All we have to do is just help the people. And we have to figure out what that looks. So with the fluidity in our program, we can do that.
Okay. I guess I was just because I know, I don't know exactly what the zoning of that building is. I would assume that it's commercial. I know across the street is residential.
Right.
So I didn't know if you got into any.
I did. And so again, that depends upon if this goes before the board and they're open to that discussion. Because again, I'm already talking to Tom about possibilities and what the RFP currently has. And again, if they're open, and this is just an opportunity. Now, if it doesn't work with that particular property, there are a few other properties that we've looked at as well to do this. But the goal is to see if there is an actual population that we can assist independently of government.
More of a statement, but what you brought up, every one of us here, we have our own life stories. Every individual has their own experience, and you got to address that. People that are homeless got there, a lot of them probably because of poor decisions, and they're going to need to be addressed on those, whatever, however they got there, need to address it on an individual basis. The homelessness within, you can take California or just about any place, has greatly expanded. All the funding that we do this, and it's taxpayer dollars going to pay for something, and they're getting worse and worse results. Homelessness is greatly expanded, but the funding is expanded. So partly what I believe is happening, and we're going to be addressing CSCB here shortly, is we're taking more and more tax dollars, and we're making more and more government jobs and not correcting the problem. So, and with suicide too, we'll be addressing that also. So if we can come up with something that will actually get results, because what we're doing right now, it seems like if the government touches it, bad things happen.
This is true, and if I could just respond to that, one of the truths that I found is that, and I learned this, and I'm grateful for the last 5 years. I've never been through anything like it, but it taught me that anything you really want, you can get it. And I share that story about my father passing because he was a victim of poor care. They did everything by the book. They followed every law, every regulation. But it was considered the standard of care. But what I've learned, if that would have been one of their family members, standard of care would have increased. That is almost consistent across the board. You have to be called to help people. It's not a second choice job or a second chance job or something you're doing to pay bills. You have to do it because sometimes you will go into deficit helping people. And that's why if you want to help people, it's going to cost you something.
What is your timeline? I mean, I see the timeline in here, but how quick are you looking for a response?
I would love a response within the next 45 days. That would be great.
Okay.
And then after that, give us 90 days to satisfy whatever requirements that you and the commissioners would have.
I just have something. I support the whole health, treating the whole person. I see this every day in healthcare that we're conditioned to give a pill for every ill, they say. people are conditioned to ask for a pill for every ailment they have. So this has been, it's just how we are all conditioned to treat ourselves, to self-treat or to treat others in healthcare. So, and I see that in mental health as well. The medication is not always the answer. As Mr. Lokers had said, you have to treat the whole person. The crisis situations, in St. Clair County, like the response to suicidal ideation, it is a great response, but then what I see is it is kind of a weaker long-term, where I see my patients back over and over again where they're having those thoughts again. So if we can treat the whole person and, help them to kind of navigate society and community, and that would be, that whole person model is definitely the way to go. I agree.
And to close, taking 30 seconds that I didn't use from earlier, would say that there was a scripture where Jesus, he healed a guy, and then the Pharisees and Sadducees came to him and said, you're healed, okay, but did he heal you on the Sabbath? What methods did he use? If it was 2026, they would ask, were you compliant? Did you let everybody know? Did they check this? Was he sterile? And he said this, and it's the powerful reality. He said, I don't know where he was. I don't know what happened. I don't know what he used. All I know is I was blind, and now I see. And that should be the goal, that we as care providers in any way, shape, form, or fashion, we can have people testify. I don't know what all they did. All I know is the problem I came in with, I no longer have it. And now I'm living a better life. And that's the goal. And I'm even open for this. You don't even have to say, I support you doing this, but we need this. That would be a win. Because I don't care who does this, but we need to stop half-treating people because their beliefs affect the way in which they get care. And we have to help individuals no matter what the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Trey. Okay, next we'll have a presentation from the CSCB by Amy Smith and Deb Johnson.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us here. My name is Deb Johnson. I am the CEO of St. Clair County Community Mental Health, and I'm also the chairperson for the Community Service Coordinating Body, affectionately referred to as the CSCB. Co-presenting with me is Amy Smith. She's an Assistant Division Director at CMH, but she's also the primary support person to the Community Service Coordinating Body, and has been for 30 years? Close to 29, close to 30. So we're here today to hopefully clear up some confusion and a lot of misconceptions and misinformation about the CSCB, and to answer any questions that you might have. So our objectives, switch, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about the benefits of the Community Service Coordinating Body, how needs in St. Clair County have been identified and addressed over time, and the benefits of community collaboration. So when we talk about what is community collaboration, first of all, we do believe that when everybody collaborates effectively, everybody wins. Many counties in Michigan do have a community collaborative such as ours. There was a time where probably every county did, that address issues that impact the lives of the people in our community. And we work together through the collaborative to address also like shared recipients, shared people of the services that all of our different organizations provide. And we do think it's a powerful way to address the problems that we have in our community. So you can see, I'm not going to read all the little things. You guys have the PowerPoint. But one of the things I want to highlight, is that we do feel that, we increase our impact. We are more efficient through collaboration. We share resources in terms of staff support, knowledge, data, different kinds of things like that. So I think that it's a great thing. And Amy's going to talk about the history over the years.
Good morning. We started as a pilot project that came out of the Department of Community Health back in 1984. They identified 5 communities or 5 counties in the state. St. Clair County was one of them, and they asked executive directors to come together and look at and streamline services related to vulnerable adults. We started here in St. Clair County with 8 agencies. Community mental health was the lead. Public health was involved, transportation, Department of Social Services, Department of Health and Human Services now, Economic Development Committee, which is now Blue Water Community Action, Council on Aging, I believe the ARC, and for the life of me, I can't remember number 8. But they all came together and they started addressing issues regarding streamlining services for vulnerable adults. That model kind of continued and it started to gain steam. It formalized and became the Human Services Coordinating Body at the state level. And from the state, they continued to formalize what this entity was supposed to do. Locally, by pulling together, they created a mechanism that came together and addressed issues. They developed the Pathway Shelter. They developed the Alice McKinnon Center that addressed child abuse and neglect counsel. They created the Blue Water Center of Independent Living. The Human Services Coordinating Body didn't, but they worked with community partners to develop those services, just to give some examples. Under Governor Engler, he really endorsed this whole model and rolled it out statewide. So at that point, he called them multi-purpose collaborative bodies, MPCBs, and there were 76 MPCBs statewide out of the 83 counties. Some of them already regionalized and worked together, and so they were natural partners. But in that time, part of the requirement was that they created a in-depth needs assessment, and so locally, it was led by United Way, St. Clair County RESA, and Community Mental Health. That created then a 5-year prevention plan that, again, secured state funding to support the community collaborative. Locally, then, what we did is we renamed our body to the Community Services Coordinating Body, rebranded, and then continued to expand. At that point, I came on in 1997 as part of that whole group. Moving into the 2000s, under Governor Granholm, she also endorsed the collaborative model. She, however, didn't like the name of MPCB. She changed it to Community Collaboratives. So statewide, that's what we were known. But she also really endorsed the Early Childhood Investment Corporation, really pulling together early childhood initiatives. So at that time, Dan DeGros, who's the superintendent of RESA, said, yeah, no, we will embrace this, we will continue to roll it out, but it will go underneath our community collaborative because we already have the collaborative in place instead of starting one. Under Governor Schneider, a lot of that prevention funding all went away, and consequently throughout the state, the community collaboratives started to shrink and or disband. We in St. Clair County, at the full body level, had some very hard decisions to make. Do we want to continue or do we not? And so in your historical document that you have in your packet, it outlines a lot of the data that I'm giving you, a lot of the programs and a lot of accomplishments that we had. But in there, it also talks about our commitment year, 2016, of when the CSCB decided that, yes, it is worth it. We want to continue as a collaborative body. We want to continue to address community needs and continue as we are. And we move to a tiered due structure. Moving on, then, we have continued to operate under those guidelines. Periodically, we have focused on different issues. Our work groups have changed. Our membership has continued to grow. Some have dropped off, some have continued. But in 2024, we celebrated our 40th year as a community collaborative. Out on our website are 2 videos that were created, and we brought back some of the original members and asked them what it was like to be a part of that original community collaborative and why they endorsed it. And if you haven't seen those videos, I would encourage you to do that. It's definitely informative, talking to those earlier members, some who are no longer with us now, as to and current members and their value of the CSCB. The last 2 years, like I said, we have 74 members currently, and we have continued to work collaboratively on issues depending upon what they are. In 2025, we were definitely part of the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, when Justin Westmiller opened it up to address the governmental shutdown and to help provide resources that were legitimate and pulled together to share one message, and worked with Health Department and other members of the CSCB out of the EOC to address the SNAP discontinuation of food. So, next slide, please. So through the years, we have worked on a wide variety of issues. In 2019, we rolled out our website and our Facebook page. We put a lot of information out there. We have our
Facebook.
Facebook, yes, but we have a lot of the information on our website. And so those are just a handful. Some of the other things that we do is we create resource materials. So we update annually an adolescent resource guide that is created out of one of our work groups, so that not only teens, parents, caregivers, and professionals know what resources are available for adolescents. We work hand in hand with Great Start and their programs. We created a help card that lists a lot of the human service entities out there that people can easily access. We support we put on a community resource fair that started originally addressing homelessness, and we have just continued. It's a great partnership with the community college. It's coming up on May 20th. If you want to come by and check it out, we would love to have you. If you want to volunteer, we're looking for volunteers and actively recruiting. We also market other fundraisers that our membership have and or resource materials, such as the Dementia and Alzheimer's group. So in a nutshell, we are definitely promoting a lot of resources. We also have our 988 billboards that we work with, our suicide prevention committee puts out, and that kind of stuff. So at that.
Okay, and a lot of the resources are at the back of the room that she talked about. Next, okay. So in 2018, we decided that we should go through a little bit more formal strategic planning process. So we talked with the steering committee and the full body, and it was recommended that, yes, we use a facilitator to help us get through the process. And so we contracted with an organization to help us. And we started with getting needs assessments from all the member agencies who had anything available. You know, we had community health needs assessment data. We had data from community mental health, from the community foundation, from a variety of different organizations, MiFi data, things like that. So we did obtain also specific feedback from each of the individual members by doing a survey, like what do you see as the priority concerns in this community at this time? And then we went through a whole process talking about that, and then ranking them, and then moving forward. At one point, we did have the planning session where we talked about, we did prioritize and develop goals and objectives for all of that, and what the structure was going to be that we were going to use. We did finalize the plan and then presented it to the full body, who fully endorsed it. And as a part of that process, and maybe this slide should have been first, we did confirm our vision and our mission and our guiding principles, and you can see that there. Our vision is that all individuals and families in St. Clair County will live in a community that provide opportunities to achieve personal and economic wellness. The mission is that members of the St. Clair County CSCB collaborate to strengthen our community and meet identified community needs. And then you have our guiding principles. Our approach is to promote with a commitment to promoting equity. We believe in empowering residents in their own journey of personal and economic wellness. We respect the cultural and ethnic diversity of our community. We value the importance of various perspectives. We work towards a common goal with shared leadership, mutual respect. We make decisions based on data, research, and evidence-based practices. And we believe that to achieve the mission, a community-wide approach is essential. And I wanted to add just a little something from, that we know that we have to work closely with local, public, and private community-based organizations and the providers to address prevalent human conditions and issues that relate to a shared customer base. So when you say, why do we all come together, that is why, because St. Clair County residents are all of our residents, we are, and we look at the needs across the board. And it's important to include the agencies that are there, and we know that local coordination and collaboration with these entities, like Health Department, with RISA, with Council on Aging, with St. Clair County CMH, et cetera, we know that by doing that, it will make a wider range of essential supports available to the people in our community. So we landed on the three strategic priorities: economic self-sufficiency, education, and health and wellness. And you can see the statements underneath. I'm not going to read them to you. But to support the priorities, we created work groups, or we assigned existing work groups to be the primary person responsible to address those goals and objectives. So under the economic self-sufficiency, one of the things is we do know that we recognize that there continues to be an issue with some level of homelessness in our community. We have a housing and support services group that has done a ton of work in this area. So they, and you can see some of the things that they've held related to that, including that community resource fair. And then also, the functions related to the housing include the Housing Strategic Plans, Housing Assessment Resource Agency, which is the HARA, and Homeless Management Information System. And then an associated initiative at the time is also the Offender Success Program. Under education, we have early childhood services, and I think it was shortly after this that we did develop the adolescent services work group, because we looked in that area and we said, we have a lot of stuff going on related to early childhood. What do we have from like 8 to 18? And so that's when we formed the adolescent services work group. I actually was the initial chair, and then eventually Karen Puckle was keeping the chair, and she's here today. And through that effort, Amy already mentioned, one of the greatest things was pulling all the resources together for adolescent services in our community. And that is active, it's kept up to date, and it can be accessed online, or we have hard copies, but most accurate would be online. And then health and wellness, we have a substance use prevention, treatment, recovery work group. They've done a lot of, we also have a lot of data, but they've done a lot of data collection in terms of what was missing. They did a little needs assessment in our community, what was missing in terms of the services, and what kinds of prevention things do we need to step up on. So and then there's community education awareness. And then they also, a few years back, started an overdose fatality review action committee. And that is one of the two that is not open to the public. When we talk, somebody actually mentioned earlier that all of our meetings are open, and minutes are available, except for the child death review and the overdose, opioid overdose fatality committee. Okay, there's a lot of associated initiatives. You can switch. This is the current organizational structure. There's a steering committee made up of about 18 members. Then there is the CSCB full body, which includes all of the steering committee plus all of the rest of the members, which is about 74 or 5 at this point. We do have some ad hoc committees, and that's on our updated slide, though we updated it. There's no longer a business for the work groups. There's no longer a business resource network group. We continue to have the rest of the groups that are listed that I've already kind of mentioned. And then we have some associated initiatives. Some have been mentioned. The two that are not open to the public, again, are the Child Death Review Team and Overdose Fatality, and those are because of various state mandates related to that, and obviously privacy issues. And then the other ones are the Critical Incident Stress Management Initiative, and actually Amy's been lead on that initiative for a long time too. Offender Success Program, Suicide Prevention Committee, Amy's also very active in that group. And then the car seat program and wraparound.
So basically, we are not an organization. We are a group that come together and believe on doing better things for our community. Membership is voluntary, and we have core functions, which you can see listed here, but really it is to go above and beyond what any agency or organization does independently and pulls people together, pulls those organizations together to work on similar issues. So we identify what the gaps and needs are in our community. We, leverage resources so that the more resources we have, we can go to state, we can go to federal funding, and if we work as a collaborative, we're more apt to get those money, similar to what Sally Curry was saying earlier. We are focused, and we've had that same structure for many years. The issues come and go depending upon what our county needs are. But it's really to promote networking, infrastructure, reduce duplication of services, and we are very data-driven. So we look at what is our local data and what is it telling us, and how does it differ from state data or federal data? Because those are always several years behind. And so we definitely use the data as part of that. So then, really what's the value? We are not an organization. We're just a group of organizations that come together to do better for our community. We're small, we're large, we're governmental, we are, whoever wants to be a member can be a member. It's because the more people that come together that are like-minded, that can work on different issues, the more progress we're going to make in our community. So currently we have 74 members, and we have a tiered due structure that, based on the size, is the dues. The dues then often pay for my salary and a couple other, a little bit of clerical support and things like that. But it's also to support some of the materials that we create from the CSCB. So you can see what our budget was in 2025. So, and again, our organizations are small all the way up to the larger. And you're there because you want to be there. So we also have online. Our website is www.cscbinfo.org, and you can see some of the things that have been on there, as well as our contact information. We also are out on Facebook. So a lot of the things that the work groups create, we put out on Facebook for organizations then to share. Again, another way of creating another group of people. So with that, that's the CSCB in a nutshell.
Any questions?
Yes.
I have lots of questions. If you want me to start.
You can start. We got to start somewhere.
All right. On page 14, you show your budget for 2025, $72,400. How many employees does CSCP have?
It's not officially their employees. The employees work for St. Clair County CMH, but there is about maybe the equivalent of 1.5 FTEs, or maybe not even.
She stated that it pays her salary.
A portion of her salary, yeah.
Okay, so there is or is not any employees?
They're not employed by the CSCB. They are employed by St. Clair County Community Mental Health.
So we're paying tax dollars out of community mental health to pay that salary.
No, we're using the CSCB.
Where's the money come from then?
The dues from the membership.
So from the people that are part of this, they pay the salary of a county employee.
Yes.
Because you just said that there's no employees. They're employed by the community mental health.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not an agency that could employ, it's a committee. It's a
Is
community
there
collaborative.
Well, you also stated that you do an annual audit.
Yes, we do.
If you could, at your convenience, I'd like to see the last 5 years audit.
You're welcome to that. We provide our full audit to the commissioners annually, so you have received it, and it is in there.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen, I've been a commissioner for 16 years until it was brought to my attention within about 2 months ago, possibly 3 months ago. Nobody, CSCB has never come to the county until April 2nd. The county commissioner, Lisa Beeden, said she attends meetings. She is not appointed to that position by the chair. And nobody from the county has ever given us a report in 16 years. So a lot of this is coming to light now. That's why we're having a lot of questions. And we should welcome every single question, just in case maybe we can correct things up and make it a better organization or dissolve it. Is it a business? You got a 501c? Does it just
No, there is no 501c3 status.
Okay, so how do you account for the $72,400?
Through regular accounting practices. We have monthly budget reports that we present to the steering committee. It's accounted for through our
There is-
audit. I mean, it's the same question. How else do you want me to answer that?
Okay, so there is really no oversight of the CSCB other than yourself?
That's incorrect. We have a chief financial officer. We have auditors that review the stuff that we submit to the auditors. And also, the money and expenditures are reviewed every month by the CSCB steering committee and available to the full body.
Do you give a report to the federal government or the state government?
Related to the CSCB?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So you said you have a chief financial officer for an entity that does not exist.
The chief financial officer is St. Clair County Community Mental Health. We act as the fiduciary and manage the funding.
Okay, so community mental health dictates anything that happens at CSCB. They dictate we're applying for grants, and I'm going to get that question. in a minute.
Absolutely not. CMH does not dictate what the CSCB does. Decisions are made through a steering committee and a full body vote, and it is a collaborative process.
Well, you're saying you have, and I'll go back to it, $72,400 budget, but they really don't have a budget. That's community mental health's budget.
No, the budget is for the CSCB. Community
For
mental
a-
health
For an
doesn't spend that
entity
money.
that doesn't really exist.
It's a community collaborative, and it has existed for over 42 years in our community. And it started through a state-initiated process.
Okay.
And it's actually in our contract, the CMH General Fund contract, that we need to be a part of a community collaborative, working with the organizations that are part of the CSCB, so that we can better serve the shared recipients in our community.
It was 40 years ago plus, it was mandated by the state. Then they rescinded that, so it's no longer mandated by the state, correct?
It's not mandated, it's recommended. Well, I guess in a way, it's mandated through our general fund contract.
Okay, so your own contract then.
For
You
us to
guys
be
have
a
put
part of
together.
this, yes.
You mentioned that you brought millions of dollars to the community. Would you be able to find out where those grants were, just for the last 5 years?
Yeah, a lot, yeah, we could probably find out most of them. And Sally Curry talked about some of that money.
Has any monies gone to any place other than the city of Port Huron?
Yes.
We represent 160,000 people roughly, and you have 30,000, so 20% of the population. I'm looking at this, looks like if anything, the city of Port Huron is getting the benefit.
I would not agree with that.
All right?
Down
I'm
River-
District 6. Did Columbus Township get anything?
Downriver Community Services, which is now Community Health, Community First Health, we have written letters of support for them to get their funding for many years. We support the,
Well, community mental health is its own entity. They have a duty to do, and they get paid, and you got 500 employees roughly at community mental health to do what they need to do. Same thing with our health department. But I'm asking a specific question for District 6. Is there any place in District 6 that I represent? Columbus Township, Berlin Township, Riley Township, Wales Township, Casco and Ira Township. Are you aware of any monies that have gone to assist them out of the millions?
I don't know specifically, and we can look to that, but I do know that there's been a lot of initiatives that have supported the people in your district.
Well, there's a lot of good talking points and a lot of good bullet points that say, look, this is what we're doing, but you can't give me any specifics. Can you find any specifics?
With
for
all due
District
respect, Commissioner Rushing, if you would like to ask the questions to us, we will jot them down and we will provide the specifics to you. And also, we also presented a lot of this at the full commission, or the Human Service Commission meeting. And another thing I would just like to correct is that your commissioners appointed Lisa Beeden. That was made clear at that meeting.
No, they did not appoint Lisa Beeden.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you, but that was said at the
Well,
meeting.
Steve Samasco made that point at April 2nd. She was not appointed. She goes to those meetings on her own for District 3. She is not appointed by the chair of, and Steve Samasco makes all the appointments.
Well, that's not,
And I mean, I got lots of questions, but could you define economic wellness? That was a point that you mentioned many times on April 2nd. I was in Myrtle Beach. I do that trip every year for 35 years. Define economic wellness. That was a big point that you believe that this CSCB does.
That's one of the things. And economic wellness means that people are able to live and afford to live, afford their food, afford basic needs and things like that.
It's nice talking points. How do you actually do that? How do you provide economic wellness? It's nice to say it, and this is what it can potentially do to assist people. How do we actually do it? Are there any quantitative things that we actually do? Does community mental health do it? Does somebody at CSCB oversight this, or do you get up grants for the city of Port Huron?
Last November, when the federal government stopped providing SNAP benefit, the EOC was operated. We pulled together key stakeholders to kind of figure out a plan of action of how we could best support those people who are not going to have any food because their SNAP benefits were. Also the veterans, who because of the federal shutdown, were not going to be able to have food. So we pulled together and worked out of the EOC, which is a county department, and rolled out messages that would help those individuals. That's just a quick example.
So now we're using county funds with CSCB. Are they overseeing where these funds, can you give dollar amounts that have done this?
Are you talking about the $7,500 dues the county pays?
I'm talking about what you brought up, economic wellness. and what
No,
you're
you
trying to
just,
find.
you just made a statement that we're using county funds. What are you talking about?
That's what she just said.
What, the $7,500 contribution?
No.
The EOC.
How are you funding economic wellness?
Through various initiatives.
I don't need various initiatives. You brought up at the meeting, Steve Samansky asked you a specific question. Your term was, it's murky in regards to funding and expenditures, so you really couldn't define his questions at April 2nd. Go watch the video. That was your words, murky. You brought that up in.
I didn't use that word, so maybe you misunderstood
Well,
me, but.
Read
At any rate, I don't know, like, one of the things that we had a group, the Business Resource Network, through, that was one of the associated initiatives, and the intent of that was to help work with employers, to help people get jobs. We worked with MRS as well, local DHS office, and other people, and so that was some of the support that
Can
we
you
provided.
quantify that? It's a nice statement, but quantify, can you do that? Because that's the question. We're a government entity. We're elected to office. We're not a private business. We need to answer to anybody that asks these questions to us, and you're not giving me any quantitative answers right now.
I don't have all the answers in my head, the exact facts, but you provide me with a list of your specific questions, and we will provide you with a list of
Well,
specific
you and I have
answers.
talked, and I bring these stuff up in a public format.
Madam Chair, could we have order, please?
Chair, Sergeant Burns.
No,
Hold on.
stop. Okay,
Madam Chair, we need order.
everyone take a breath. Dave, can you formulate your questions so that they could get them and have a chance to respond to them? And then,
What I like to do, and I was going to bring up, is in a public format, because she refused to answer some questions that's directly given to her before, and that's why I'm at where I'm at now.
But I didn't refuse to answer any questions.
I can get the email that was sent to you and you didn't respond to it from another commissioner.
No, that's not true. If you're talking about Steve Samansky, I met with him and spoke with him for an hour before that meeting that I was at.
We should be able to answer any questions, and if you don't have the answers today, please get them.
I already offered to do that.
And there's 31 municipalities in here, and you'll say you serve the entire county, and there's millions of dollars, but there's nothing quantitative to say who oversees the grants and accountability of these grants.
The organizations that submit for them.
Which organ? Give me one.
The harbor.
The harbor is one.
Okay, the harbor provides the information. Now, who oversees those tax dollars? Who oversees the harbor?
The
Themselves?
harbor board, their corporation.
So there's millions of tax dollars. I can make reference to potentially the hospice that's going on in Los Angeles. If we don't have direct oversight over the tax dollars that are being spent, they can get the grants without the county being involved in them, can't they?
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah, without the county being involved, sure. but one of the things that Sally mentioned is that they need the support of a community collaborative that confirms, yes, that is definitely needed in our community. We have data to support those things.
Does anybody get paid other than Amy?
A fraction of a clerical person, yes.
So there's numerous, potentially numerous people. Now I'm going to ask Liz King, is there anybody at the health department that gets paid to assist CSCB?
Not directly that gets paid to assist CSCB. I attend meetings, Elise attends meetings, Amy attends meetings in a collaborative fashion. That's there. I think it's a community event. We're collaborating with everybody else. We're not getting paid directly. We're definitely not getting paid by CSCB. Those are our normal, everyday duties under our job descriptions to collaborate within the community on those social determinants of health that affects the health of our community.
Well, you get a paid pretty good salary. You get paid a very well salary. And I imagine your salary is close to what the governor gets paid. And that's with benefits. But if you're dedicating some of your time when you should be running our community mental health and not being part of CSCB as their chair, you're dedicating time to something, and that's taken away from what you're getting paid to do for the county. That's what I'm looking at. And to me, it doesn't pass the smell test that we're using tax dollars to be doing this. We work together regardless. And I think that could continue anyways. But with the funding that's going here, I want to answer for the tax dollars that are being spent. And I can't get quantitative figures from that. So could you give me the last 2 years? And I'm giving you questions right now. You can replay this, and you'll have the questions, whether I write them out or not. You can replay this meeting and find out those questions and get me answers. If you're going to say, I have to give you a written piece of paper for questions to be answered, you need to answer this, because CSCB, it's been around for 40 years. It hasn't been reporting to the county commissioners. And for me to be, whether it's the health department and the community mental health, the funding that goes there, and the library, I don't know how the library got involved in this, but apparently they're on the board too. And I'll be looking into that. And I've been into this about 3 months now. And I've given you enough questions to answer now. Are any of the services that CSCB provides duplicated at community mental health?
No.
Okay. What service does CSCB do that they need community mental health? We're already doing these services. I guess that's enough. You got enough questions to start with, but if we can't have answers to where these tax dollars are going and the grants that are being collected, there's government expansion throughout the United States. We're using tax dollars that nobody sees where the tax dollars are going.
Again, are you just talking about your $7,500 contribution?
No, I am not. I'm talking about the grants, the millions of dollars.
Those aren't all tax dollars. There are various things from the federal government and things, I mean, maybe it's federal tax, but it's not the St. Clair County tax dollars.
It most certainly is.
Okay.
That's enough. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the board?
We
Okay.
have some order, please. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the board?
My question was, I did go back and look in the archived website of cscbinfo.org, and I was not able to find any meeting minutes, like going way back, prior to this. And then I was not able to find any financial reports. That was my, of the grants that have been awarded, to see what is this budget for, where is the budget going? Is it all going into the, there's no documented budget or proposed budget, and then there was no, grant oversight. That was my concern as well, because essentially those are tax dollars that.
But there is
for
grant
those grants.
oversight.
And let's see.
If I could just clarify, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but CSCB is not applying for these grants. It's a
Correct.
collaborative body that supports other organizations that are applying for the grant. So each organization is in charge of their own grant.
And
It's
there's-
just getting the support of those agencies.
That is correct.
Could I tag on to that too? So as an example, if you remember 3 or 4 years ago when we expanded our adolescent health centers into Algonac and Yale, the CSCB provided a letter of support in our grant application. So they were saying, we support the health department because of these reasons as the coordinating body in their application. And then, of course, we were overseeing those funds that came in. They had nothing to do with the funds that we received. Perhaps I reported out what we were doing, when we were starting, the progress, those things.
So that, I don't think in their, like, budget, I think the only thing in your budget, and I don't know, again, correct me if I'm wrong, would be part of her salary, part of the clerical salary, and the printing materials that,
Correct.
I mean, $72,000 isn't gonna go very far
Correct.
in today's world,
Well,
right?
she said it, that they actually don't have a budget. It's community mental health's budget.
I did not say that,
No.
Commissioner Rushing. I did not say that.
Okay.
We do have a budget.
The CSCB does have a budget. I share it with the steering committee every meeting, what's being spent. But it falls under the CMH because we are not a legal entity.
Right, it's a subdivision.
Exactly,
Just like-
exactly. But, so it's accounted for in the CMH budget. I have my separate line items. I keep track. We monitor it every month. And then, you know, I report out to the steering committee. And then once a year, we report out to the full body.
Carolyn, did you have other questions?
That was just, I just was unable to find any of the budget and the financials, that's all.
Yeah, okay.
We're happy to let you see a copy of the budget. And it's at every meeting every month.
I did have one question for you, Deb. What is the difference between CSCB and Building Community Partners? How are those committees different?
I'm going to say that Building Community Partners is a bunch of many line staff that come together to share resources, give updates on their specific program. So there are a lot of line staff that learn that. The CSCB is a more formalized operation. We have our guiding principles. We have MOUs that are filled out by members. It's voluntary. You can be a member, you don't be a member. We collect the dues to support my salary predominantly, and then other business of the CSCB. And we are a community collaborative. Our focus is really to address large-scale issues in our community that no other agency or organization is big enough and handles on an ongoing basis. So we're voluntary. You can be a member, you don't need to be a member. We have small members, organizations, as well as large organizations.
Building Community Partners is also voluntary. That's why I was asking that question.
Just one question. Do any of the members receive any of the grants?
They don't receive grants from the CSCB.
Of
They
the
receive.
74?
What?
Of the 74 members, do any of them get a letter from the CSCB to allow them to receive monies?
Yes, a lot of them do. We have written lots of letters over the
That was
years.
the example.
And that's a benefit of being a member of the CSCD, is that community collaborative, recognizing that there is a need, a gap in our community.
Because maybe the part you weren't hearing before is that funders require that there is a community collaborative that says, yes, there is a need in this community for this service that somebody's writing a grant for. So we say, yes, we agree, and that would help out a lot. And so they write their grant and they get the funding.
But
Dawn.
it's not just because we're coming to present, it's not for sure. We have to go through, they present, it's formal, they get the endorsement, it's a vote, and it's all reflected then in that work group or that committee's minutes or summaries.
Dawn, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question. Do you ever invite the medical director to come to any of your meetings?
Frankly, I have never met the medical director until today.
Okay. And does Dr. Mercatot, Dr. Gilmer, does she come to any of these meetings?
She hasn't since she left the area.
She had been.
She was a member, though, yes.
Right, so
before
Dawn,
this.
I filled
why isn't
that
Dr.
gap.
Nevin attending?
Yeah, we had that discussion, and I invited Dr. Nevin. I think we could go jointly. He could go. I offered to back out if there's only one seat allowed. Certainly, he could go. It could have been my oversight when I came into this role with the newer medical director that I just jumped onto CSCB. Deb and Amy reached out about filling our seat, but I think he's very welcome to go, and I've extended that, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's welcome to attend. We
Okay,
don't go
so-
around inviting people though all over the place. I mean,
Yeah.
we have all the organizations represented, like Liz said, so we wouldn't think to have.
And the things that we do and with the information we share at full body meetings, it's the responsibility of that employee or director to take it back to their organization and share it with their staff,
As it's
share it with
appropriate.
their constituents,
As it's
et cetera.
appropriate, yeah.
Mhm.
So if anybody else has any other questions, I would think that we can present them to them and they could get answers back for us. And then we can go from there.
We'd be
Thank
happy
you
to
very
do that.
much. Thank you very much for coming in. Okay, we move on.
We have some order, please?
So we're going to go on to the minutes of March. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for March. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Budget to actual, no, we're taking that off. Correspondence, Liz.
There was no correspondence included for
Okay.
this month.
Thank you. Unfinished business, Liz?
I would say it's Dr. Nevin as well, but I have no further information on teen health and where Port Huron Area School
Is on
District is with that. I know there's been multiple entities within the community, who they have been speaking with, and I'm hoping within the next, maybe by the next meeting, that they will have a decision out and we can share that information, or they'll be sharing that information, I'm sure, before we are here.
Yep, okay. And Civics Plus?
No new updates on Civics Plus, it's still outstanding.
All right, Dr. Nevin, the fluoride regulation draft.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I have some exciting news. The department has completed, I think, what we can call our draft of the fluoride regulations. This is tentatively titled Regulation Regarding Fluoride Addition in Community Water Supplies. It hasn't been made public yet. Our staff has added a very strict do not copy language on this. I'm hoping that perhaps at this meeting we can arrive at some recommendations regarding the fate of this draft, whether this should be released and entered into the public notice and comment period, or whether we'd like some additional time to review and reconsider. This is a long document. It is many pages, and it represents significant work on the part of the department, myself, council, health officer. If I may, Madam Chair, because this is going to be difficult to summarize, I will read directly from two of the final public health findings, which motivate the regulation. Consistent with the Health Department's duties to address health problems of particularly vulnerable population groups, and in light of the federal regulatory developments described in the foregoing findings, this is what we've been discussing at previous meetings, the Health Department finds it necessary and appropriate to adopt this regulation. And then in the following finding, it says, this regulation does not prohibit fluoride. It establishes a health protective standard for fluoride addition consistent with the EPA's maximum contaminant level goal and provides that community water supplies that elect to continue fluoride addition above that standard must notify the Health Department so that affected municipalities and the public may be informed of the associated health risks. That, in a nutshell, is the significant development and modification from the prior recommendations made by the Health Advisory Board. This draft regulation, if enacted, would not prohibit the addition of fluoride, but it would set a health protective level with updates by the federal government that would be enforceable here in this county and would require water systems to either elect to reduce or eliminate fluoride addition to below that federal health protective standard, or to inform the health department in writing of their voluntary election to continue addition of fluoride above the federal health protective level. I think I can speak for the department in saying that we feel very confident that this regulation will survive any potential legal challenge. There does not appear to be any ripeness for any municipality or any entity to challenge the regulation initially upon its potential passage, because initially the regulation does not do anything. Action under this regulation is triggered by changes in the federal MCLG, which, as we've discussed at prior meetings, are currently under consideration and may result in a lowered MCLG within the next 1 to 2 years. So with that as an introduction, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and then perhaps at the end of our discussion, we can consider a recommendation regarding whether to publicize these regulations, recommend formal adoption by the health department, and initiate the statutorily required notice and comment period.
Madam Chair. Yeah, I read through this lengthy draft, and it looks like the municipalities won't need to change anything because they're all already at that level. It's just awaiting the federal guidelines, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct. So currently, the federal government, the EPA, sets the MCLG at 4 parts per million, and every water system in the county maintains fluoride levels or adds fluoride well below the current MCLG. What this regulation does is trigger requirements and potential enforcement to future changes in the EPA's MCLG. And you'll recall at prior meetings I discussed the regulatory review process that the EPA is engaged in. This was motivated by the recent federal court order requiring that the EPA regulate fluoride in drinking water as a plausible health risk. The EPA has elected to pursue regulation not under the Toxic Substances Control Act, but under the Safe Drinking Water Act. And the Safe Drinking Water Act sets 2 levels. One, the MCLG, or the goal level, which is the federal health protective level, below which the federal government feels very confident that there are no adverse health effects associated with the contaminant at that level. And then, for pragmatic reasons, because some contaminants, which the federal government acknowledges are potentially harmful, are difficult to remove from water systems. We might want no PFAS altogether in our water systems, but the federal government recognizes that it may be impossible to remove all PFAS, and so it permits levels of PFAS higher than the 0 level that most health officials would say is maximally health protective. And likewise with fluoride. The federal government is conducting a new review of the toxicity of fluoride informed by recent studies, and it is likely going to use a safety factor more consistent with other contaminants, safety factor potentially on the order of 3 or 10, and I speculate, I can't predict with absolute certainty, but I speculate that this process will result in EPA setting an MCLG below 0.7 parts per million. And if that does occur, and the regulation does not presuppose that particular outcome, but if that does occur in 2027 or 2028, then what this regulation would do at that time is impose a requirement on community water systems in St. Clair County, all water systems that provide water to residents of St. Clair County and that are physically located in St. Clair County, to either voluntarily reduce fluoride addition to below the new MCLG, or if they choose to knowingly and intentionally continue to add fluoride above the federal health protective level, notify us in writing of that decision. And then we will share that notice with affected municipalities. And that, in a nutshell, is our proposed regulation.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Liz, is this ready to go for a public hearing?
I believe so. Dr. Nevin and I have reviewed with legal any vulnerabilities that could potentially be in there. I'm confident with their review, I think he is as well, that it is ready in its current state to be released. I think we put the do not copy on there, so you would have the courtesy to review that and provide us some guidance before, I'm sure, a lot of public input.
Thank you. Okay, the online vaccine waiver update.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could, is there any interest in a motion from the members in this regard? This is not something that the health officer or myself do need Health Advisory Board input for. This is an internal regulatory matter. But that being said, I would certainly welcome a motion from the board to support our releasing this for public comment and initiating the notice and comment process.
I was just going to do that farther down the agenda.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The online vaccine waiver update.
Liz, did you want to address that, or should I?
You should.
Okay. All right. So I'm very pleased to report that after an extensive internal deliberative process involving legal, nursing, our plans, personnel, health officer, and myself, we have successfully deployed our fully online vaccine exemption certification process. We are very confident that this online vaccine exemption certification process allows us to fully meet the regulatory requirements set by the state, that we certify that the exemption, that we certify on the exemption that the individual has received the regulatorily required education. This is provided fully online. It does not require the parent or guardian to make a difficult, inconvenient trip to the health department. Like many other processes today, this is now deployed fully online, very convenient for especially our blue-collar workers, many of whom have multiple jobs, who simply cannot make it to the health department, nor should they need to come into the health department to receive education that can be very easily provided online. I think we all recall for many years our students were expected to learn fully online, and so it defies reason that parents should not be able to receive education in this regard in a fully online manner. We were initially concerned that the system may suffer some technical hiccups or glitches. We did beta test it in advance, and I'm pleased to report that the system seems to be functioning perfectly. The system requires the individual to enter their email address. They're referred to DocuSign. DocuSign sends a link to the email address, and I think this has done much to reduce the potential for DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, sock puppets attempting to interfere with our process. And thus far, I believe we have at least a dozen applications or exemption submissions that have been processed by the system. Liz, is that correct? Correct. Yeah, and our system advises parents that we may take up to 5 days to internally review and certify the submission, to cross-check it with other data, ensure that the information is accurate, and we try to link it up to state registration in the MICR, where a registration exists. And thus far, I do not believe we've encountered any significant problems. And if I'm not mistaken, the number of exemption forms completed during this period is comparable to the number of exemption encounters that we might have otherwise expected during that time. We process several hundred of these a year, and of course it's increasing as time goes on for obvious reasons. So I think we can tentatively say this is a great success. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have in that regard.
Anybody have any questions? It's kind of something we've discussed for quite a while, so I think we're good to move on.
No.
All right, new business. Just real quick, under old business, I'd also state the health officer evaluation has been completed. Thank you to Leanne and Paul and Liz. We were able to complete that, and it's moving on to the county administrator.
Are we saving all the motions for the end?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So next on your agenda under new business are two memos that should have been provided. The first is, I suppose this is really old business because it's an extension of something we have been discussing, namely our department's commitment to supporting vaccine-informed consent and vaccine choice more broadly. And what we're getting into now are specific programmatic implementations of this broad policy. So as a policy, St. Clair County Health Department supports vaccine choice, supports informed consent, supports the three pillars, if you will, of the policy that was discussed some months ago. And what this memorandum does is propose an implementation of this that would begin to assist outside providers in meeting their statutory requirements in this regard. So you'll recall that we discussed internally ensuring that we are using the current CDC-approved vaccine information statement, that there really isn't any good reason to wait for Michigan to update their version of the statement, that this is really not consistent with what federal law and regulation requires. The use of Michigan VIS has seemingly been an attempt by Michigan to subvert the letter of the law that requires distribution of an actual MICR opt-out form prior to childhood vaccination. So what this memorandum does is it recommends on a voluntary basis, this does not suggest that we add these performance metrics to the formal checklist of compliance that community vaccine providers are judged by. But what this does do is take advantage of the fact that we have our immunization staff, our nursing staff, interacting with about a dozen immunization providers in the community that are part of the Vaccines for Children program, the VFC program that we administer. And what this recommendation is proposing is that during these compliance, thank you, not inspection, during these compliance encounters, that we use this opportunity to inform VFC providers of what the law requires and to promote distribution of the CDC-approved vaccine information statements in view of the Michigan vaccine information statements, that we take this opportunity to remind VFC providers that state law does require distribution of the actual MICR opt-out form, and because an increasing number of parents are choosing to opt out of MICR, because MICR is, of course, keyed to a vaccine schedule that many parents and their physicians no longer choose to follow, that we should be promoting the use of alternatives to the state tracking system, which does not provide any sort of choice in preferred schedule, and that we provide, for example, the paper vaccine tracking cards that were commonly in use during many of our childhoods. So this proposal is very, very modest, and in fact, we can begin, with the board's concurrence, we can begin implementing these changes almost immediately, because we do have some VFC meetings and encounters scheduled in the coming weeks. I would intend to actually speak to some of the representatives of the VFC clinics, informing them of this proposal and encouraging them to comply with state law in this regard. But of course, this would carry even more weight with the formal endorsement of the Advisory Board of Health. So in due course, perhaps at the end of the meeting, I would certainly welcome a motion from the board as in the bold text at the bottom of the memo. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Yeah, so just so I understand this correctly, currently VFC It is what's mandated. Currently, you can opt out of MICR, but we want to enhance that knowledge. Is that what you're trying? I understand the VFC issue because I know the state has their own pamphlet, so to speak, and it goes beyond what the VFC does.
So what I would
And the
say.
CDC guidelines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I would say is, the law is very clear, right, on the first 2 points.
Yep.
And the third point, the promotion of alternatives to MICR vaccine tracking, obviously it follows naturally. If a parent chooses, within their statutory rights, not to have their child's vaccines tracked in the MICR, well, then it follows, it's good public health practice to encourage alternatives to MICR, namely the use of paper records. So the first two are statutory, and the third follows logically and reasonably from the first two. What we are doing is essentially using this opportunity, this encounter with our VFC providers, to remind them of not only what the law is, but best practices in this regard. This is not formally part of the compliance checklist. There are many other things. For example, they need to make sure that the vaccine fridge or freezer has an alarm attached to it. There's multiple compliance measures that go into ensuring proper vaccine service provision. But on top of those mandatory state or federal requirements, local health departments can add local QI measures, local quality improvement measures, not attached to any sort of compliance, formal compliance metrics, but as part of overall quality improvement. And I would characterize this as quality improvement, right? We want our vaccine providers to be fully compliant with the law, right? That is a good measure of quality. And then for parents that are choosing not to use the MICR tracking system, we want those vaccines to be tracked, ideally on paper in this case. So I view this as a logical and arguably even a necessary set of steps that we would be deploying first with our vaccine for children customers. And then depending on what feedback we receive, how well this goes and how, if we identify any barriers to voluntary compliance, then the advisory board and the health department in due course can consider other measures to ensure compliance with these statutory requirements. Because of course the state does not seem to be enforcing these statutory requirements, but we have the independent authority, if necessary, to do that.
Right. I understand the point of parents having the option to opt out of MICR. I don't know why we would promote that personally, just because I think MICR allows for a better record-keeping system because parents lose those cards. They just do.
Well, Madam Chair, I should clarify. We're not promoting that a parent opt out of the system. We are reminding providers, just as we do here at the health department, that the law, the legislature of our great state, has passed a law requiring that all healthcare providers distribute a form prior to childhood vaccination, saying very clearly, you have the legal right to opt out of MICR. If you choose to do so, check here, enter your name and details, hand it back to the doctor, and we will ensure that this vaccine is not tracked in the state tracking system. So we are not promoting opting out as much as we are ensuring that parents have the right and the physical ability at the time of the vaccination encounter to benefit from what state law already provides them. And there's a very good reason why some parents may wish to opt out of MICR.
I understand that. I'm not arguing that point at all. I guess I got the word promotion of alternative vaccine tracking. I took that third line.
Oh, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if you read the memo carefully, you will see that language applies to those cases where the parent has opted out. So I don't want this memo to be interpreted as promoting the use of alternative vaccine tracking systems across all parents. But for those parents who have chosen to opt out of MICR, perhaps because with their physician, they have decided that certain vaccines, which are keyed and predicted in the MICR system, are not consistent with informed consent, not consistent with the parent and the physician's preference. They simply don't want to be constantly reminded of this, right? At some point, the doctor has to stop saying, well, you know, you're overdue for this. No, I'm not. We have said very clearly we are not consenting to that vaccine. And so if the system is not able to accommodate the parent's preference of an alternative schedule, then it's perfectly reasonable and perfectly understandable for the parent to choose to opt out of that. And in those cases, we do want to promote the use of alternative vaccine tracking. And so many of these VFC providers, they may not even have the paper forms, right? So this would, for example, ensure that we provide them with assistance in this regard, point them to places where they can potentially get these paper forms. We all recall paper forms were perfectly fine for tracking the very important coronavirus vaccines that we were all ordered to get many years ago. So the CDC, federal officials, state officials, they understand that paper records are perfectly adequate. And I trust that parents can copy these, put a copy in the safety deposit box, and so on. And this is by no means essential, as some people have suggested it is.
What, you still have your green card? I have mine too. I have mine too, but I know a lot of people that have lost theirs, and that's why the whole promotion of the alternative is where yeah, there probably is. I'm sure there is. I just wanted to clarify that we weren't promoting the alternative vaccine tracking over MICR. We're just giving parents the option that they are allowed under law for withdrawing from MICR.
And Madam Chair, reading directly from
Right.
recommendation 3, consistent with the board endorsed recommendation to promote alternatives to state MICR system in the context of those who
Right.
choose to opt out, VFC providers should be encouraged to offer and promote other means of tracking immunization, such as paper immunization records, personal health record cards, for parents who exercise their statutory right to opt out of MICR.
No,
So
I
there should be no
just
doubt.
wanted to clarify that, but thank you. Is there someone that would like to make a motion on this?
I'll make the motion.
Do you want to say something? I'm sorry. I feel like our
I'm
Assistant
sorry,
Director of
Rebecca.
Nursing is just, has something to add, so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So in measure number 1, regarding the NDHHS vaccine information statements versus CDC, back in November of 25, NDHHS did update their indicator in the provider education assessment reporting tool that VFC providers are to use the CDC vaccine information statements. And then secondly, the current immunization registry is transitioning to STC Health. Just completed my learning modules on Monday, and regarding like alternative vaccine schedules and aligning with like CDC or HHS guidance versus AAP, there is an option within the new tracking system to check a box, modified vaccine schedule, so the parents aren't being sent recall reminders and can follow whatever schedule they choose at that point.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Could it be that things we discuss here in St. Clair County are having broader impact across the state and making the state reconsider their ways of doing things? Perhaps we're accomplishing a lot of good here in our little corner of the state. But that being said, and I do appreciate the update, that doesn't obviously negate the rationale for this proposal. And until we see how this alternative schedule tracking is incorporated, there may be many parents that still, for other reasons beyond
Correct.
this, choose to simply opt out. They simply may not want the government knowing what vaccines their child got, for obvious reasons. But I do appreciate that update, and I think it's very favorable that we're seeing this kind of positive change from the state.
All right, so Paul, you made the motion. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, I'm going to take Dawn. So moved by Urban and supported by Falk to recommend that the health officer promote the distribution of the CDC-approved vaccine information statement distribution of the MICR opt-out form, and promotion of alternative vaccine tracking within departments VFC inspection. We're going to change that word compliance to compliance, and QI processes. Are you guys amendable to that? Yeah, okay. All right, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Last item under my update, and this may seem a little whimsical, but, I've been thinking about this for a while. Well, we could use a little whimsy here on the board, I think. So for some time, I've been, there's a party shop up the road from where I live, and I go in there, on occasion, as many Michigan residents do, before the weekend. And you don't notice it unless you're looking for it. But in this store and really all throughout the county, there are relics. There are relics of this period in our recent history that we may notice subconsciously, but we don't consciously notice them. But when we do notice them consciously, I think it causes some problems. It causes some frustration. It brings back some painful emotional memories. And as this memo argues, it undermines what we do in public health. And what I'm referring to these relics of the COVID era. Some of these non-pharmacological interventions that were promoted by public health officials with very little evidence backing them, that we had to comply with, under penalty of, being incarcerated. I'm talking about things like these plexiglass barriers that you still see all around the county, signs on doors, in walkways, on the ground, saying stay 6 feet apart, walk this way down the aisle, walk that way down the aisle. We all remember this, right? And years after any plausible rationale for these measures has long since passed, years later, we still see these relics scattered all around the county. And so what I'm proposing in this somewhat whimsical memo is that we take advantage of an anniversary that's coming up, May 11th, 2026. And I would ask the press who's here, please don't spoil this ahead of time. If this is promoted, we want to promote this in advance of the date and not sort of ruin the fun. But what I'm proposing is that we take advantage of the May 11th, 2026 anniversary, which is the 3rd year anniversary of essentially the ending of the declared public health emergency associated with COVID. That was in May. Believe it or not, it's been 3 years since that declaration. And what this is proposing is that we celebrate, or we mark this day. I don't know if celebrating is, well, I suppose celebrating is the right term. That we celebrate this day by having a great COVID cleanup all throughout the county. And we use our public relations, our public affairs might. We use our press releases, we use social media, we use the power of our spokespersons in the department to promote businesses and public-facing organizations and even some healthcare clinics that continue to keep this signage in their clinic, that we promote the removal, once and for all, of these completely unnecessary relics. So in this memo, I say that their continued presence is not without consequence. These relics implicitly validate interventions whose scientific basis was at best uncertain. The 6-foot social distancing rule was derived from an outdated model of respiratory disease transmission premised on large droplet spread, but a scientific consensus subsequently affirmed the virus that causes COVID is transmitted primarily via aerosols, rendering fixed distance floor markings largely safety theater, as many residents of the county have known all along. Plexiglass barriers similarly lacked rigorous evidential support and have been shown in some analyses to disrupt ventilation airflow in ways that may be counterproductive to the very air quality goals they were presumed to serve. And their continued display in clinical and public health settings, in public settings, risks normalizing a standard of public health practice that the scientific record does not support. And for the discerning public, invites questions about the reliability of public health guidance more broadly. Public health's credibility depends on its willingness to update practice in response to evidence, and the persistence of these measures in our community where they are no longer warranted undermines that credibility. So, these relics will remain unless some organization with some degree of authority says, enough, let's remove them. So that is the motivation behind the somewhat whimsical Great COVID Cleanup Day. And because the date is coming, it'll be before our next meeting, I would ask that the board consider making a motion in support of this, and I'm sure our department will do a fantastic job promoting this.
Is there any discussion? No, it could be right now. I got nothing. I think, okay, thank you.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah.
I read this as well, and I think our team can do this and do a good job, and I appreciate you with your whimsical approach, and I think it just needs to be a positive message and statement, and I think they can do that. That's it. We celebrate things. Dr. Nevin knows this. We promote many days.
Yes, we do.
On social media, we promote other agencies' runs and walks and days. We can do this, but I would just say it needs to be done in a positive light for everybody and not authoritative over someone's business. Just, it has been 3 years since this, and maybe that does need to be marked, but in a positive way for sure.
I would agree with that, Liz.
Yeah.
It just needs to be positive.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'd like to also say that it was the government that mandated this too. So initially, right? When they talk about,
Some things, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Madam Chair. I mean, these are relics of government overreach, right? And as the memo says, these represent largely safety theater, mandated by public health. And public health's reputation is harmed the longer that these unnecessary theatrical relics remain throughout the public. And clear messaging from a public health department that this is no longer necessary, these should go, I think would provide the impetus for many to say, oh, yes, we totally forgot about that. Yes, we are going to remove that now. And I think most people will appreciate these relics being gone. It's been long enough.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Can we agree that to put the positive spin on it, to just celebrate the ending and, just as a reminder, those are no longer necessary?
You're making a motion.
Sure.
You can put whatever motion you want on it.
I motion, we could put out that memorandum in a positive manner.
Promote the Great COVID Cleanup in a positive manner for May 11th, 2026.
Yes, as both Liz and Dr. Nevin. Thank you, Liz, for the positive, positive whimsical.
Had the touch of spring in there.
Is there support?
I would.
Support.
Sorry.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Now,
Circle
no
back
spoiling
to-
it in media. We don't want this to be spoiled. We want to let our
Watch
team
the
put something
YouTube
together.
video.
Yeah, right, if they watch the.
I suppose so.
Yeah. If you want to circle back to the fluoride, do we have a regulation number? I know it's not on the top of it.
So the regulation number would be applied at county level.
Right, that's true.
So
But it still has to go to a public hearing here, and it should have the number before that.
So the solar regulation was similarly marked.
Okay,
It was 25 in anticipation of it being passed in 25 with a blank
Okay,
at the end.
all right. So it'll, I guess, get it when it goes to a Board of Commissioners. Is there a motion for the approval of the regulation regarding fluoride addition in community water supplies?
I make that motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Is there any further discussion on that?
It's good regulation. It was a slow read the first time, but it's very good regulation. You guys did a good job.
I appreciate the fact that there is the out, and I think that that's important. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that will go for a public hearing. Liz?
Okay, for my update, I'll direct you to the administrative staff meeting notes in our division summary report. Starting with IT, we were having some difficulty with Wi-Fi connections in our upstairs area. That has been resolved. IT did install some new points of access. IT is also working with us, this is county IT, working with us closely on that UAF project that's in there. That's a user authorization form. That's when someone starts, we authorize as the department director, division head, what access within our computer system they have. So we have a team working on that. The reason why that's being brought up and kind of front and center is that we have had a lot of retirements, resignations, and then following that, a lot of onboarding that's going on. So we have really focused, I would say over the last year, on onboarding projects. I call it offboarding, but I don't think that's the right word either. But when someone exits, there's a process there. Exit. That all has been put into an electronic database for our directors. And that just ties in, the UAF ties in with that. So IT is helping us with that as well. Safety-wise, I think I'm going to focus a little bit on safety. We've talked about that. We did have new badges that were issued, and then we had some ink issues, so that's being discussed, but we're working through that. The new badges were issued because of the doors within the building. An update on our strategic action plan. So in addition to the draft framework that Brandon and the PPEV team has provided, there is now draft questions that we're reviewing for the group to move forward with that strategic action plan. In the next couple of months, you will see that, and I hope you'll be engaged with that survey as well. Speaking more on pre-boarding, onboarding, I talked about resignations, so we had our mental health provider, a nursing supervisor. There's multiple clerical positions that are open. We did backfill the EH sanitarian position with a new SAN starting next week. We're continuing discussions on building safety. If you remember, we do a quarterly all-staff meeting in January. We did have the sheriff's department come in and provide that a review for some staff or new to many, that active shooter training in January. Then we did the simulation within our building in April. We do have another all-staff meeting that will cover fire drills, emergency situation communication and groups. Visitor policies are being addressed as well. So we're kind of diving in as a building, in our new building, to safety. Jumping to your division summary report. Under the business office, you see FSRs, that is your financial status reports for the second quarter are being completed. Those are due. So Jeff is diligently working on that with his team. Also ongoing at the same time is our county audit, April 6th through June 30th, and he's answering for that as well. In addition, they're developing a standard operating manual for cross-training within the business department. Environmental health, I want to give them some kudos there, is that they did have a recent EGO audit of their type 3 water supply program. You see there, they did meet compliance with established minimum program requirements. The evaluation consisted of both field and in-office components. It was determined that all minimum program requirements were met, including 41 out of 41 indicators. The report commended our staff for their knowledge and their strong field presence. So very proud of that. Good job for Steve Demick and that team. Also want to mention the Environmental Health Board of Appeals. We talk about that periodically, and I think it's a good time to do the education on that. I know, Steve, you sit on that, and thank you. And I think Paul jumped in for you there as well. But there is a Board of Appeals that we have under our septic code for variances out in the communities. Typically, it does happen on Harson's Island. I think I've heard. Those are the ones you've been to historically, mostly in that area. That's where Paul was. And so this board meets. It's a Board of Health member, a township supervisor, and a septic installer. They meet on site and they go over everything, and that variance was issued. I already mentioned Teen Health Center. No new updates there. Noted in here as well is that our E3 services grant in our KPAC location will cease. I think I mentioned that last meeting. Okay. The last day of services there is April 17th. We talk a little bit about caseloads throughout here. Rebecca already mentioned there's a transition. MICR is going to, I guess, a different platform. Same ideas and some upgrades.
What's it going to be called? I'm sorry.
I thought they were still sticking with the MICR name. It's just in the background, it's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the term MICR is in statute. So
Right.
the system that the state administers and chooses a vendor for and chooses the specific technical details of implementation, the system is still MICR. But the particular vendor and the computer
Doesn't matter.
platform and
Okay.
technical details of the MICR system are changing. But the statutory, regulatory requirements that motivated all of this, that hasn't
Right.
changed.
And MICR, you know, is Michigan Care Improvement Registry, so I can see why they're going to
Yeah.
not change. Under planning, promotion, and education with our data team, I know Brandon and his team worked a lot with Dr. Nevin and legal counsel back and forth for a long time on that DocuSign and creating the validation online vaccine waiver process. So a lot of time spent in the last month on that. Also, they participated in the Michigan Volunteer Registry call-out drill. So there's a Michigan Volunteer Registry coordinated through Homeland Security Emergency Management that we have been a part of when we do need volunteers for large events that happen under the public health umbrella. We have tapped into that before. People can go on from our community, state maybe their credentials, what they could do and how they could help. So there was a call out, there was a drill, they're circling back around on that. And then today as well, over at Emergency Management, there is a volunteer appreciation open house with 30 people registered. So Brandon will be participating in that as well. And that's all the things to touch on. I know the report's lengthy, and if you have questions, you can always ask or call.
I just have a question for Steve. Can you just say what the vapor intrusion site is? What is that?
It's an old dry cleaning facility in the city of St. Clair.
Okay.
It's been converted to a apartment complex.
And what is it doing?
There's always concern with dry cleaning facilities.
Okay.
They
So you're just monitoring?
Papers, and they want to verify that none of those are present.
Okay. Thank you. I'm like, vapor intrusion site. Haven't heard that one. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody have anything for Liz? Items from our members. Anybody have anything?
Oh, with Trey's presentation, are we
Yes.
gonna talk about that next meeting, or?
Did anybody have any other questions for Trey, since he's still here? And then I guess I was gonna approach it more from Liz's front of, I mean, ultimately, this is a Board of Commissioners issue. If I understand, you're looking for support from this board. Gotcha. Perfect. Got broad shoulders.
So basically, in other words, you would like us to make a motion for a board of support for you to proceed with the Board of Commissioners.
Did you have something, Dave?
Yeah, and I've talked to Trey on this, various issues we talk. On this, as far as the zoning, we have no control over that. And what normally happens with the ZBA is if you're gonna get zoning for something, for that piece of property that it is not currently zoned for, try to get that prior to any acquisition of the property if that goes forward. Because if you do it afterwards, you no longer have a hardship. You're putting the hardship on the city of Port Huron. And a ZBA should reject that. So you could be, part of your proposal, if it goes forward, is that the zoning matches what you need to do with the property. Because we have no control of that at the county. That'll be by the city of Port Huron.
And that property, that's in the township. That was always confusing. That's Port Huron Township.
Yeah.
No, right, it crosses right into the township right
it's
there,
right
and that
in the
was
county.
always
Yeah,
different, so I'm sure Trey knows
yeah,
that.
Trey, yeah. You're good?
I would motion to support his proposal to move forward to the board.
So you would make a motion to support the Moak Street project?
Yes. I'll second.
I will second that.
Dawn already did, sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's okay. She's just too quiet.
Yeah. All right, it's been moved and seconded to support the Moak Street project. That's what we're calling this, correct? Yeah, okay. We're going on to the Board of Commissioners. Is there any further conversation on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Anything else from members? Not, our next meeting is May 20th, and I'm sure that we will have a public hearing that day, unless we're going to set it up a different day from the meeting.
So, Madam Chair,
because it's a 3-week.
The regulatory hearing would be separate from the Health Advisory Board. It's a meeting run by the Health
Right.
Department under statutory authority.
As the other one was.
And I suppose we could take input from the board as to when we would hold it. We can delay a public hearing a month, 2 months, 3 months. There's no great urgency to passing these regulations, but there is a minimum amount of time between the public hearing and the matter going before the Board of Commissioners. Of course, we have Commissioner Rushing here. We can discuss when might be a reasonable time for this regulation. If favorably adopted and recommended for passage, it might be preferred to go before the Board of Commissioners.
For me, I'm always sooner the better. I like to take care of business.
Madam Chair, then I might recommend health officers work with administration and council and schedule an appropriately timed meeting. I believe we had the last one in the afternoon or evening to accommodate a maximal
Yeah,
comment.
I think evening.
Yeah.
It was in the evening.
So
Yeah.
I would certainly recommend we do the same thing. And then if necessary, in response to public comments, there'd be a period where the health department would consider modifications to the regulation, after which either the updated regulation or the regulation in its original form would be formally adopted and go before the board for formal ratification.
Yeah, okay. So that date will be released to the board when it's set. Okay, so our next regular scheduled meeting will be May 20th. Is there a motion for adjournment? At 11:20. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Adjournment?
We're adjourned.